Check out FlipsideGaming.com for all your gaming needs. Use the promo code HEROES to save 10% on all orders over $10. Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends. Welcome to another edition of the Magic the Gathering Market Watch, and we have a lot to talk about today. Dominaria United has been revealed. We've seen all the cards now, and no surprise, those cards are having an impact on some prices in the secondary market, but there's other things happening as well. For example, the modern meta is shifting again, and that is leading to at least some different cards moving up in value. And there's other things happening we'll discuss too. Today's threshold for the video is $2. We're not going to talk about any card unless it's moving at least $2 up or down. Quickly before we get started though, just a fast reminder, if you go to FlipsideGaming.com, you can use the Heroes promo code to save 10% on orders over $10. Currently, you can pre-order Dominaria United products there. They have everything you see on the screen as well as the Commander decks. Remember, if your order is over $100 or consists only of singles, shipping will be free in the United States. Also, whenever you use the Heroes promo code, it does support the channel, which is always appreciated. So thank you. And without any further ado, let's get into it. We'll begin with the Standard Legal Spotlight. This is where we talk about standard cards that are moving the most over the course of the week. 2 cards to discuss today. Teferi, Who Slows the Sunset. This is the one from Midnight Hunt. It goes up $2.92 this week to $7. In Pioneer, this is in Bant at 4-color ramp. The amount of play those decks have been seeing has been ramping up due to their strong performances. This is also found in a number of Commander builds, including a Drechsler Praetor's Voice that's been a popular one recently. But there is a card coming from Dominaria United that's pushing this too. Let's take a quick look. It is Timeless Lotus. Teferi could be poised to see more play in Standard and other formats with this on the horizon. Teferi could untap this, much like it untaps Nykthos Shrine to Nyx for extra mana in those Pioneer decks. Plus, the Brothers' War may bring us some more artifacts that could push Teferi, who knows? Over the course of the video, we're going to see a number of Dominaria United preview cards. The ones I selected to look at are all rares or mythic rares, and I'm not going to spend a ton of time on them in most cases, but always feel free to pause the video if you want to dig a little bit deeper. And our last card in this section today is Graveyard Trespasser. This is the one from Innistrad Double Feature. It goes up $2.76 this week to $6.47. So this particular copy dried up online. The price is a little inflated due to some high asking prices. The Midnight Hunt copy is easier to find since that set had a wider release. And there were also 3 copies of it in the Dimir Control Standard Challenger deck this year. When it comes to gameplay, you see this in Standard. It's in Rakdos midrange, Mono Black Control, sometimes Rakdos artifacts. However, Standard rotation is coming. This may still be very useful, though, depending on the direction of the meta. In Pioneer, this is in Rakdos midrange, Abzan Greasefang, and Golgari midrange. It gets a little Commander play, too, and there are plenty of Dominaria United cards that interact with the graveyard that you may need this to protect yourself against. Here's one example I thought was interesting. Urborg Lurgoyf. That takes us to the Pioneer Legal Spotlight. We have a couple of cards going down in value and then a few going up. First one moving down is Breeding Pool. The original copy from Dissension, it goes down $2.01 to $33.50. So the Shocklands, of course, are being reprinted in Unfinity. But there is still one moving up in value, which we're going to see later in the video. When it comes to gameplay, well, Breeding Pool is a Shockland, so you know it sees a ton of play. In Pioneer, it's in Bant Spirits, Hidden Strings, sometimes Bant Ramp. Modern, you see this in Omnith Locus of Creation builds. Living End. Those are both doing very well right now in the meta, seeing a lot of play. It's in many other decks there, too. And it's a huge Commander mana-based card, of course. Cut 2 Ribbons is next. This is the copy from the list. It goes down $7.21 this week to $5.78. It was in the list for Zendikar Rising and Kaldheim, but you might remember this copy dried up last week online. It spiked pretty aggressively. This week it is retracting some, but it's still inflated. I still wouldn't pay this price for the card. It is seeing more play now, though, in a popular Pioneer build, Rakdos midrange. This also gets some Commander play. Many times it's in Prosper Tomebound, for example. And there are some Dominaria United cards that could play well with this, too. Here's just one example. Jaya Fiery Negotiator. Alright, here's that Shockland that is moving up in value, at least a little bit. This is Blood Crypt, but it is the one from the list. It was there for Innistrad Crimson Vow and Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. Then it returned for Commander Legends. It goes up $2.46 this week to $24.02. Like I said, all the Shocklands are being reprinted in Unfinity, but this particular copy is a little harder to find, so it's going to swing a little more aggressively in the marketplace. Less copies just means price differentials are going to stand out more. When it comes to gameplay, of course, it sees a lot of play in Pioneer. It's in Rakdos Midrange, Rakdos Sacrifice, and more. In Modern, it's in Grixis Death Shadow. This is also in a hot new Modern deck that's been performing well and was showcased by a lot of content creators this week. It is a Rakdos midrange deck called Rakdos Scam. It runs things like Grief and Fury along with Undying Malice. Of course, this is in a lot of other Modern decks too. And this is a huge Commander mana base card as well. The Chain Veil. This is the Magic 2015 copy going up $352 this week to $24.61. This was in the list from Zendikar Rising through Midnight Hunt, which was a pretty long time. Now, when it comes to gameplay, it sees a lot of Pioneer play right now. It's in the various ramp decks. Like I said before, the 4-color and Bant ones are doing very well right now. This also gets a good amount of Commander play. It's in Attracts the Praetor's Voice and many other builds. You guessed it, Dominaria United is bringing a bunch of new Planeswalkers. We already saw one earlier, plus Liliana of the Veil is getting reprinted there. More on that a little bit later, but let's look at some other Planeswalkers. The first two are from the main set. The second two are the front-facing commanders for the two Dominaria United commander decks. Diada Binder of Wills is from the Legends Legacy deck, and Jared Carthalion is from the Painbow commander deck. The last card, Savitru Dragon Master, that is one of the Eternal Legal Dominaria United box toppers. And the last card in this section is Cyclonic Rift. This is the copy from Modern Masters 2017. It goes up $402 this week to $41.31. So this is in Modern Mono Blue Tron, but it might be better known simply for being a huge commander card. It's in many decks in the format, including Atraxa again, which has been seeing a lot of play. Basically, though, if you're playing blue and commander, you probably want a copy of this in your deck. It was in a Damia Sage of Stone deck on an Extra Turns episode of the Command Zone podcast this week. That might have brought some attention back to it. And that will bring us to the Modern Legal Spotlight. We got some cards going down in value, some going up to look at today. First one on the way down is Ulamog, the Infinite Gyre. This is the one from Ultimate Masters. It goes down $226 this week to $48.07. This was reprinted in Double Masters 2022, which is why it is moving down. It is a popular commander card, though, in many different builds, including Kozilek the Great Distortion. Bloodstained Mire. This is the one from Onslaught, the original. It goes down $229 this week to $79.99. You might remember this copy jumped last week. It does retract some this week, though. It's a fetch land. It's going to see a ton of play. It's in the various Archon of Cruelty modern decks, which have all been performing very well in the meta. It's also in Burn there and much more. Legacy, you see this in Reanimator, Ad Nauseam Tendrils and more there. And it's a huge commander land too. You see it all over the place there. Sword of Fire and Ice. This is the Dark Steel copy. It's down $247 this week to $53.87. And this is not seeing as much modern play as it used to. You really don't see it much at all in Legacy anymore either. In Modern, though, it can still show up in Death and Taxes, Azorius Stoneblade, and more. Gets a fair amount of commander play in Sir Gwyn, Hero of Ashvale, and many other builds. Next is Emrakul, the Jens Torn. This is the Ultimate Masters copy, down $280 this week to $27. It was in the list for Zendikar Rising and Kaldheim, but more importantly, it was reprinted in Double Masters 2022, which is why it has been dropping dramatically. In Modern, it's in those Archon of Cruelty builds, Enchantress, and more. Legacy, you see this in Sneak and Show, Mono Green Cloud Post, and more there. Liliana of the Veil from Ultimate Masters, down $333 this week to $66.30. Like we mentioned earlier, this is getting reprinted in Dominaria United, so many new copies are coming. But this will be legal and standard in Pioneer very soon, which will result in a wider player base that will want copies. It'll be interesting to see ultimately where this shakes out. In Modern, it's in Rakdos Midrange Scam, it's also in Jund and more there. Plus, it gets some commander play too in Tiny Bones Trinket Thief and other decks. Last card moving down today is Ren and 6 from Modern Horizons. It goes down $409 this week to $73.99. This was part of the list for Zendikar Rising and Kaldheim, but it is another card reprinted in Double Masters 2022 as well. In Modern, this is an Omnith Locus of Creation builds. It's also in 4 and 5 color Archon of Cruelty and much more. Vintage, you see this in Oath of Druids. Get some commander play too in a variety of builds, including Lord Windgrace. First card moving up in this section is Avacyn, Angel of Hope. The Double Masters copies of $201 to $50.15. The Avacyn Restored copies of $271 to $50.83. This is a big commander card in lots of builds, including Kalia of the Vast. Typically, when we get some new Angels, this card does move up, and Dominaria is bringing a little support to the tribe. Here are just two examples from the main set. The first does not share color identity, but it is Archangel of Wrath. And on the right, you see a mythic rare, which is particularly interesting to me, Sarah Paragon. Next is Flusterstorm. This is the iconic Masters copy. It goes up $2.98 this week to $27.99. Solid sideboard card that can disrupt Storm strategies. Because of that modern meta shift that is occurring, there's a lot of people going back trying to rebuild or change their modern decks. And this is one of those very solid sideboard cards that does appear in a lot of places. It's in modern Murktide regions, Omnifocus of Creation builds, and more there. In Legacy, you see this in Jeskai Control, 5-color Zenith, and more in that format. When it comes to Vintage, you don't just see this in sideboards, it also shows up in main decks. It's in 4-color Tinker, Paradoxical Outcome, and more there. And this gets a good amount of Commander play too in Urza Lord High Artificer and many other decks. Grief is back again, up $3.89 this week to $18.85. Sees a lot of modern play, no doubt. There are typically 4 of these in the main of Living End. Those decks have been seeing more and more play each week, it seems. There's also 4 of these in that Rakdos midrange scam deck I talked about earlier. That's seeing a lot of play now. I've also seen a Grixis version of that deck running this. It's in many other builds there too, like Rakdos Sacrifice, for example. It's another deck that's been doing very well in MTGO recently. In Legacy, you see this in Reanimator, Lion's Eye Diamond Dredge. Vintage, it's in Dredge there. Also see some Commander play too in a variety of builds. Doubling Season. The Double Masters copy up $302 to $91.33. The Ravnica City of Guilds copy up $428 to $91.40. Huge Commander card. It's in lots of builds, including Atraxa Praetor's Voice. The thing about this card, though, is every time any new Magic the Gathering product comes out, more cards that play well with this arrive. We already saw some earlier when we were looking at Dominaria United previews. Why not look at a few more? The ones I selected here were preview cards with green and the casting cost that stood out for me. They all could make Doubling Season better in the future, perhaps. The top row are all cards from the main set. The bottom row are Dominaria United Eternal Legal cards. The last one is from the Painbow Commander deck. Tomb of Urami. This is an older card yet to be reprinted. It goes up $4.31 this week to $6.95. And this is in those modern Rakdos Sacrifice decks, which, as I mentioned earlier, have been doing pretty well on MTGO recently. Inspiring Spike played a Rakdos Sacrifice deck running this card along with Mayhem Devil, and that combo has really pushed the build. This also gets a little Commander play, and I am already seeing some people pick this up as an upgrade for that Legends Legacy Commander deck. It's even in some early deck lists around a card from there, Shannon Sleeper's Scourge. And the last card in this section, Denizen of the Deep, the one from Portal Second Age, in theory, going up $13.40 to $22.39, but here's another example of a hard-to-find copy of a particular card drawing up online. Nobody's paying this price. There's just some really high asking prices on the available inventory. Once some more copies hit the marketplace, this will come back down. It does see a little Commander play, though. That takes us to the Vintage Spotlight. This is where we talk about cards that see play in Legacy, Vintage, or cards that are just popular among collectors. In this section of the video, for some of the cards, the price you see on the screen is going to be a little more reminiscent of what you might see on a price tracking website. Although that was also true for some cards in other sections today too. It's been kind of a weird week. The reason we do that though is because certain cards just don't have a lot of sales. They don't have a lot of inventory. So we do have to lean a little bit harder on asking price to determine value. Also too, certain Magic cards, the more iconic older ones, the price you see in this section might be somewhere in between the price of a high grade raw and high grade graded copy. Now, if the price we're discussing doesn't fall at least close to the middle of those two types of cards, or just in general, if the price isn't close to what I'm seeing when it comes to recent sales, I will point that out. First, we have Snuff Out. This is the Dual Decks Anthology copy. It goes up $282 to $21.79, but again, we have a hard-to-find copy that just dried up online. Stop me if you heard this one, but the price is inflated due to high asking prices on the remaining inventory. Sees play, though. In Legacy, this is in Dimir Death Shadow. It's also in Ninjas. Plus, this gets some Commander play in Yuriko the Tiger's Shadow and more. On top of that, you see this in Pauper too. Anger. Now, again, a little bit harder to find copy of the card. This is the one from Commander. It goes up $298 this week to $902. This is, however, in a Legacy deck that's been gaining some momentum, and that is Madness. It also gets a good amount of Commander play too. It's in Ishin 2 Heavens' 1 and more. Revised Dual Lands are moving again, at least a good amount of them. You'll see them in this section. But here's Tundra. This goes up $332 this week to $559.31. Null Rod goes up $369 to $128.39. In Vintage, you see this in Prison Shops and Is It Tempo. This also gets some Commander play, and I have seen it in a deck list around a card from Dominaria United. Let's take a look. It is Muria, Scholar of Antiquity. Tropical Island from Revised up $381 to $651. Badlands also from Revised up $435 to $446.95. Mox Diamond from Stronghold goes up $7.35 this week to $644.97. In Legacy, this is in Selesnya Depths. It's also in Lands and 4-color Loam. Plus, it gets a good amount of commander play. You see this in Urzalord High Artificer and more. Volcanic Island from Revised up $7.37 this week to $813.67. Mox Opal from Modern Masters 2015. It goes up $7.71 to $72.98. In Legacy, this is an 8-cast Painter and more. Vintage, you see this in Paradoxical Outcome. It's also in many different commander builds. And I have seen this in early deck lists around a card we just saw a moment ago, Murray, a Scholar of Antiquity. Underground Sea from Revised goes up $8 to $849.99. Gaia's Cradle from Urza's Saga goes up $10.02 this week to $987.99. This dipped again recently and is rebounding some this week. In Legacy, though, it's in Elves. Vintage, you see this in Squee Hollowvine, and it's found in a lot of different commander builds, too. Kobold Overlord, this is up $13.18 to $105. So a lot of times I don't talk too much about these older Magic cards that are rare, hard to find, because they do have a life of their own when it comes to the collector's market. Gameplay usually isn't impacting them. But in this case, I do think there are preview cards that are moving this. First thing you have to note, though, there are more copies of this coming to the marketplace since Legends cards are going to be found in Dominaria United Collector Booster Boxes, and this is one of the cards that was on the list that they did open. But let's take a quick look at the new cards that are pushing this. They're both Dominaria United Eternal Legal cards. The first is Rosnacht, Heir of Roga, and the second one is Roga, Kirkkeep Overlord. That one is a Dominaria United box topper. Back to Dual Lands. Taiga from Revised up $13.55 to $418.35. Howling Mine from Unlimited goes up $14.20 this week to $145. Psionic Blast from Unlimited up $15.49 to $68.48. Counterspell, also from Unlimited, goes up $16.80 to $98. Colossus of Sardia, this is the Antiquities copy, up $20.35 to $66.99. Power Leech is up $26.20 to $60. Plateau, the revised copy is up just a little bit, $202 to $349.98. The Unlimited copy, though, is up $88.03 to $940.21. Guardian Beast is up $220 this week to $1,025. Chaos Orb, this is the one from Unlimited, of $315 and a cent to $2,000. Is that for real? Well, I have seen high-grade raw copies get close to $1,700. I have not seen a high-grade graded copy sell for a while, but next time one does, it could pass this price. Last card in this section is a big one, but percentage-wise it's not moving all that much. Mishra's Workshop, this goes up $436.99 this week to $4,619.99. And that brings us to the Commander Spotlight. So all the cards in this section are moving at least in part because of Commander, but there could be other reasons too. In fact, in some cases, Commander might not even be the key driver, but I'll let you know as we go through. Anime Dead up $208 this week to $893. This is the copy from Mystery Booster, and Wizards did sell some more Mystery Booster Convention Edition boxes as part of a secret layer bundle called Festival in a Box. So there could be more copies of this coming to the marketplace soon. It was also in the list for Modern Horizons 2 through Innistrad Crimson Vow. When it comes to gameplay, it is a highly played Commander card. It's in Meldrotha the Gravetide, for example, and much more. Plus, you see this in Legacy Reanimator. Windswept Heath from Onslaught goes up $217 this week to $61.71. Big Commander land card found in many builds. Modern, you see this in Omnith Locus of Creation builds, Gruul Midrange, sometimes Hammer Time, and more. Legacy, it's in Selesnya Depths, as well as Elves and more there. Chrome Mox from Mirrodin goes up $230 this week to $83.80. This gets a lot of Commander play. It's in a lot of different decks, including Urzalord High Artificer, another very popular one. In Legacy, this is in Oops All Spells, the Epic Storm, and more. Vintage, you see this in Goblins. Vampiric Tutor, the original one from Visions. This goes up $233 this week to $62.42. So this joined the list for Crimson Vow. It's still there now for Commander Legends, and that does cover New Capenna, where, if you remember, the list was smaller than normal there. Even though the Magic version of the Stranger Things cards were heavily weighted, the other cards in the list appeared much more frequently in that set compared to others. Because of the extra copies circulating, this was losing value, but now this copy is rebounding some. It is a tutor, you know it sees a ton of play in Commander. It's in builds like Kirk, Son of Yawgmoth, for example. In Vintage, it's in 4-color Tinker, Doomsday, Paradoxical Outcome, Underworld Breach. This was also in that Damia Sage of Stone deck on the Extra Turns episode of the Command Zone podcast this week. Your own personal Tutor goes up 233 this week to 88.39. Much like that joke, it's an older card yet to be reprinted, and this gets some commander play in a variety of builds. Also in Legacy Doomsday. Metal Worker, this is up 235 this week to 141.25. Gets commander play in a lot of different decks, including Urza Lord High Artificer again. Force of Negation, this is the one from Modern Horizons. It goes up 236 this week to 48.20. This was reprinted in Double Masters 2022, but it is rebounding after some big losses. Highly played card in many formats. You see this in various commander decks. In Modern, it's in 4-color Living End, Crashing Footfalls, and much more. Legacy, it's in Izzet Delver, Jeskai Control, and more. Vintage, you see this in Esper Tinker, Doomsday, and more there. Mana Crypt, the Mystery Booster copy is moving up this week. We saw all the other copies moving last week. This one goes up 266 to 182.65. Keep in mind, though, some more inventory might be coming soon, like we talked earlier. When it comes to gameplay, this is in lots of commander builds like Urza Lord High Artificer again. In Vintage, you see this in 4-color Tinker, Paradoxical Outcome, and more. And this is a good upgrade to the Heads I Win, Tails You Lose Secret Lair commander deck. Replenish goes up 267 this week to 108.31. This is in enchantment-heavy commander builds like Goshintai of Life's Origin, for example. But Dominaria United is bringing some support for enchantments too. Here's just a few examples. The first two cards are from the main set. The third is an Eternal Eagle card. Replenish was also in one of the decks on that Extra Turns episode of the Command Zone podcast this week. Again, could have brought some attention to it. It was a Hezazan Tamar deck. Next we have Season of the Witch. This goes up 340 this week to 54.92. Gets a little commander play, but ultimately this has the look and feel of a reserve list buyout. Black Market Connections up 397 this week to 28.97. This is from the Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate Party Time Commander deck. It does see play in fresh builds around cards from there. Nalia de Arnis is one that is the front-facing commander. Also in builds around Barakos Party Leader, along with the background Folk Hero. But overall, this is just a very good commander card. It's showing up in a lot of other decks now, old and new. There are some cards coming that may play well with this. Here are just two examples. One shares color identity, the other one does not. They're both Dominaria United box toppers, Awabi Kalaria and Ramses Assassin Lord. Next we have Zaburi Golden Feather. This goes up 398 this week to 899. This currently does not see much play, but it is a reserve list card that is getting a push because of a Dominaria United Commander card preview. The card we're talking about is Zerium Golden Wind. Now, does this new legendary Griffin really mean Griffin decks are going to take off in Commander? Maybe not, but there are a few other cards in the main set that support token creation, and you know there are going to be players that will try. I have already seen some deck lists circulating, in fact. The reason Zaburi is moving as much as it is right now, I think is tied into speculators picking it up once Zerium was revealed. Next we have Klauth Unrivaled Ancient. This goes up 506 this week to 1790. It's from the Adventures in the Forgotten Realms Draconic Rage Commander deck. It's the foil copy we're talking about today, but there's also an extended art copy out there too. Now you know, if you've been watching these videos, Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate did push the Dragon Tribe pretty aggressively. And cards like this have been hot for a while now. This one is lingering longer than some, though. It's in a number of commander decks, including a popular new one, Miram Sentinel Worm. Beyond all of that, though, it looks like Dominaria United is also bringing some support to the Dragon Tribe. Let's take a look at some preview cards. The first three are from the main set. Bladewing Deathless Tyrant is from the Legends Legacy Commander deck, and Two-Headed Hellkite is from the Painbow Commander deck. These are just a few examples. There's other Dragon support coming too. We even saw some earlier in the video. Griffin Canyon up 585 this week to 1665. This is a reserve list Griffin support card that is moving for the same reasons that Zaburi Golden Feather is moving. I have seen this in those early Zerium deck lists too. Ultimately, the preview of Zerium Golden Wind from the Legends Legacy Commander deck was the catalyst, but I do think this is moving more due to speculation than actual deck building. Razorclaw Bear makes a return up 639 this week to 64.98. This is another older card yet to be reprinted, and it can be tough to find in high grade online. Some are building a Eula Queen Among Bears commander decks now because of the reprinting of Bearscape and the Pride Across the Multiverse Secret Lair. This is one of the more expensive bears to get for those builds. Memory Jar from Urza's Legacy. This goes up $6.68 this week to $60. This does get some commander play. It's sometimes in Turgid God of Fright / Turgid's Lantern builds. The reason it's moving the way it is ties into a Dominaria United preview card, however. Sure, it is a reserve list card, a little bit harder to find as well, but here's the card pushing it. The real Sheoldred the Apocalypse. And of course, Memory Jar could play well with this in the future. Adrix and Nev Twin Casters. This goes up $7.67 this week to $19.99. Like Cloth, we're talking about the foil copy, but this has an extended art copy too. It is a popular commander, and it's in the 99 of many builds too, including a new one, Miram Sentinel Worm. But much like Doubling Season, whenever a new set comes out, there's always plenty of cards that could play well with this. We already saw some in the video earlier, but let's look at a few more. All of these I chose have blue and or green in the color identity. Of course, the last one also has white. The first 3 cards are from the Dominaria United main set. The last 2 are Eternal Eagle. Emperor Mikhail II is also an example of some of the merfolk support in the set too. And Jeddah Ojianin Mercenary is a box topper. Jeweled Lotus. This is a big commander card. You see this in a lot of different places, including, there's a Lord High Artificer. It's up 1043 this week to 103.88. And I mentioned this last week. One additional thing that I think could be pushing this, as well as Mana Crypt to some degree, there was a thread on an MTG Finance message board discussing both of those cards. Survival of the Fittest from Exodus is our last card in this section today. It goes up $14.37 to $282. It gets a good amount of commander play in a number of different builds, including Muldroth of the Gravetide. It was also in that Damia Sage of Stone deck on the Extra Turns episode of the Command Zone podcast this week too. And that takes us to the premium spotlight. Every week there's tons of premium cards spiking and crashing. There's just so much to look at. We can't possibly follow it all. But I try to pick a few cards that I find at least a little bit interesting that maybe, just maybe, are moving more due to what's happening in the environment as opposed to just some wild financial swings. This week I have 2 cards to look at. Let's see the first one. It is the foil copy of Replenish from Urza's Destiny. It goes up $27 to $899.99. Is this for real though? Are people really paying this? Well, high-grade raw copies can break $500. I haven't seen a high-grade graded copy sell for a while, but I do think one could get to around this price point in the future. And our last card we looked at last week, but it continued to jump, so I wanted to just put it up one more time. Gaia's Cradle. This is the Judge foil. It goes up theoretically $496.68 to $3,199. What happened here? Well, a high-grade raw copy recently broke $2,000, and I think that led to sellers increasing their asking prices. Again, I have not seen a high-grade graded copy sell for a while, but I do think it would have to be a very high-grade copy to get to this price point. Not out of the question, though. Alright, with that being said, that's going to do it for this episode of the Magic the Gathering Market Watch. If you're still with me, hey, thanks for being here. I appreciate that. Until next time, stay safe out there. Thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible through the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.